In this video, we're going to be breaking down 5 MLB games happening on August 17, 2026, and providing you with a side pick and a total pick for every matchup. As usual, visit our channel for the rest of today's game picks and stick around until the end because you won't want to miss out on anything. Arizona Diamondbacks versus Boston Red Sox. The way this one lines up is fascinating when you strip away the noise and look at the actual situation both dugouts are stepping into tonight. Arizona limps into Fenway after a bumpy weekend that had 2 of their key bats leaving games early with lingering issues that don't exactly heal on a red-eye flight across 3 time zones. One of them has been gutting through a knee problem all week just to keep his name in the lineup card. The other left Sunday's contest grabbing at his rib cage after an awkward swing in the 4th inning. That's the version of the Diamondbacks stepping off the plane in Boston tonight, not the one that looked comfortable and dangerous a couple weeks ago in the desert. Meanwhile, the home side finally gets to sleep in their own beds for the first time in what has to feel like forever, coming back from a road stretch that quietly turned into a nightmare with a heartbreaker in Pittsburgh to cap it off. Fenway has a way of resetting things for this club, and getting reacquainted with that friendly wall in left field tends to snap slumping bats out of a funk in a hurry. There's also a scheduling twist working in the home team's favor here, because the visitors are coming off a taxing series where their manager had to shuffle the batting order mid-game more than once. Records between these 2 clubs are almost identical if you squint, and yet the pricing feels totally reasonable given the situational advantages piling up on one side of the ledger. Honestly, when the traveling side is leaning on hoping a banged-up middle of the order carries them through cool New England night air, that's not exactly the profile you chase blindly. You've got a home team that just wrapped a rough patch, is due for a course correction, and gets to face a visitor showing real cracks in the veneer right when they can least afford it. As our first pick for this matchup, the Boston Red Sox money line is our full game side pick. Now for the run environment side of things, which is honestly where the numbers start telling a fun story. Both teams are essentially running out variations of a bullpen game tonight, and that's the kind of setup where run totals have a real habit of drifting north instead of south. The lefty starting for the visitors carries a walk rate that would make any pitching coach cringe, sitting well above what you'd consider healthy for someone trying to keep a ball club off the bases. When free passes pile up in a park with these dimensions, damage tends to follow, especially for a rookie navigating a hitting environment he hasn't seen much of at all. On the flip side, once the home team's opener hands the ball off, the guy taking over the bulk innings has been getting hit pretty consistently all year, with an earned run average north of 4.5 that tells you exactly what happens when he leaves pitches over the middle of the plate. Fenway itself deserves a mention too, because that famous green wall in left doesn't just eat home runs, it turns routine fly balls into doubles and adds a base to swings that would die on the warning track in most other stadiums. The forecast calls for calm, mild summer conditions with barely a breeze, which is exactly the sort of night the ball carries fine and pitchers don't get any help from swirling winds knocking down would-be extra base hits. Add in the reality that both bullpens are going to burn through multiple arms well before the 9th inning shows up, and you've got a recipe for the kind of late-game rallies that push a run number past its projection. Nothing about the pitching depth on either side screams shutdown mode, and both offenses have shown enough recent pop to make the scoring feel a touch undersold on paper. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Quick commercial break. You know the deal. If you want to get our exclusive best sport picks to take things to the next level, then check out our Patreon in the link down below where we offer our best single picks, parlay picks, and much more. Go check it out. Commercial break over. Now back to the game. Atlanta Braves versus Minnesota Twins. There's something almost sneaky about the way this Monday night opener at Target Field is being priced by the market. The visitors roll into Minneapolis carrying a shiny record of 74-50, and the pinstripes on that resume are enough to make most bettors just glance at the matchup, nod, and move on to the next game. But if you slow down for a minute and actually walk around inside the numbers, this one starts to feel a lot more like a coin flip than the price suggests. Start with the guy taking the mound for the home side. He's the sort of pitcher who has become, essentially, 2 completely different professionals depending on the zip code, and tonight he's operating in the friendly one. Inside the walls of his own ballpark, he moves around the mound with the confidence of someone who knows every crack in the rubber, every shadow line, every corner the umpires like to give him. His changeup, which is basically the pitch that pays his rent, plays especially well in the cool night air off the Mississippi, where the ball just does not travel the same way it does in a hot southern park. His road struggles are real, no point in pretending otherwise, but that road version is not the one climbing the mound tonight. The Atlanta side has been leaning on a crafty veteran lefty who's been an absolute lifesaver for a rotation that has been shredded by injuries all year long. Here's the wrinkle though, he's not a strikeout artist and he's not a guy who blows hitters off the plate. He's a soft contact, ground ball guy who lives inch by inch, and those types of arms tend to be a little more vulnerable when a home lineup, hitting in familiar shadows with familiar sight lines, starts stringing together tough at-bats and grinding pitch counts. Minnesota's offense against left-handed pitching has actually been more competitive than the overall win-loss record hints at, since they draw plenty of walks and don't chase all that much. Add to it that Atlanta is jumping leagues, flying north, adjusting to an American League park with the designated hitter shuffle, and dealing with a Monday night reset after wrapping a series out west. And there's a real edge for the home side that the market is basically shrugging off. Getting plus money on a team playing at home, with their home ballpark specialist taking the ball, against a road favorite that has to solve a bunch of new variables in a single night, is the kind of value spot that patient handicappers circle in red. As our first pick for this matchup, the Minnesota Twins money line is our full game side pick. Now for the other side of the ticket, the run environment for this one is where things get really fun to talk about. Target Field in mid-August, once the sun tucks behind the Fauché Tower and the temperature slides down into the low 70s, is quietly one of the most pitcher-friendly settings in the entire sport. The forecast for first pitch has the wind sitting somewhere between a gentle breeze and dead calm, meaning nothing is going to be carrying routine warning track flies over the fence tonight. That single detail matters more than most casual bettors realize, because the biggest ingredient for a bloated final score, hot air rushing out toward the seats, is basically absent from the equation. The Atlanta veteran on the hill has been on a legitimately excellent stretch this year, walking a tightrope of soft contact and quick outs, and when a lefty like that is dotting corners and inducing weak ground balls, innings tend to fly by. His WHIP has stayed in a very tidy range across a heavy workload, and pitchers with clean base running paths tend to keep the scoreboard operator bored. On the other side, the Minnesota starter in his home cocoon has been suffocating opposing lineups, holding hitters to numbers that look more like a starter chasing a Cy Young ballot than a mid-rotation arm. His changeup plays especially well under the lights when a hitter has to make his decision in a split second and the ball just seems to disappear. You put two arms trending like that on the same night, in a park that already tilts toward pitchers, in cool late summer air with the flag hanging limp beyond center field, and the math starts leaning a very specific direction. Now yes, both lineups have real thump in them and one bad location can flip a scoreboard in a hurry. That's the counter argument and it deserves to be acknowledged out loud. But you don't handicap a game by only assuming the fireworks scenario. You handicap it by asking what usually happens when a pitcher's park meets calm weather meets two arms, who both know how to make hitters uncomfortable. The usual answer to that question is a quieter, tidier ball game than the market is preparing for. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Athletics versus Kansas City Royals. Something feels off with the boys in blue right now. Not the kind of off where you shrug and figure they'll fix it by the next off day, but the kind of drift that starts to linger in a clubhouse when the calendar tightens its grip. The Los Angeles Crew rolls into the Mile High City sitting on a 2-8 stretch over their last 10, limping through the roughest patch of their entire season. This is game 11 of 13 in a row for them, and that little detail carries a lot more weight than folks tend to give it credit for, especially when thin air, warning track flies that grow into souvenirs, and a gassed relief course are all waiting in Denver like a well-set ambush. Their star lefty is back on a big league mound after a long stretch on the shelf, and while the strikeout clinic he put on in his return outing was genuinely impressive, the coaching staff has been transparent about keeping his workload capped and building his pitch count in careful, measured jumps. Handing a still ramping starter the ball at this specific ballpark is basically the pitching version of taking a knife to a gunfight. The man himself has been on the record about this yard for years, openly admitting he's never really solved the puzzle here since his very first taste of it back in his younger days. Denver has a rough way of exposing anyone who tries to nibble instead of attack. Then there's the classic trap of a giant road favorite in the mile-high air. Historically, that's one of the most reliably scorched tickets in all of sports betting because altitude is the great equalizer, and the home crew doesn't need to win outright. They just need to hang around long enough to force one crooked inning. Colorado has been sturdy enough at their own place to keep games honest against contenders and against a starter who is still shaking rust off with a hard ceiling on his usage. Hanging around is exactly what you should expect from the home nine. Honestly, the setup is textbook. Tired road group, banged-up staff, a favorite priced like they're facing a AAA club, and a home crowd that always shows up loud on a summer Monday night. As our first pick for this matchup, the Colorado Rockies to cover the spread as underdogs is our full-game side pick. The Rockies veteran import from across the Pacific has quietly turned into one of the more delightful surprises of the entire summer, and it's worth taking a beat to appreciate why. Signing a seasoned control specialist to pitch half his games at this specific ballpark was supposed to be one of those front office moves people would still be laughing about years from now. Instead, the guy has just been carving. His ledger at home this season reads 6 wins to 2 losses with a run prevention profile that looks almost made up for anyone throwing this many innings a mile above sea level. The reason is refreshingly simple. He pounds the zone, he flat out refuses to beat himself with free passes, and his 7-pitch mix keeps hitters guessing on every single at-bat. That kind of approach travels really well even at altitude, because walks and hit batters are usually what turn a manageable frame into the sort of 5 spot this stadium is infamous for. On the visiting side, the returning southpaw showed in his first game back that the raw stuff still plays at a genuinely elite level, punching out double digits over 6 innings of one-run baseball against a legitimate lineup. Even with a workload cap firmly in place, 6 frames of that quality of pitching does not exactly scream shootout, it whispers zeros. There's also a subtle atmospheric variable working in favor of a quieter evening. The forecast around first pitch shows the breeze whipping through downtown Denver at a legit clip, with gusts approaching the kind of numbers that turn no-doubters into routine cans of corn and generally reshape the exit velocity math for a park already known for cheap souvenirs. Weather at this stadium can absolutely swing both ways, no argument there, but a swirling summer wind through the yard has a real knack for keeping crooked innings from stacking up the way this place usually invites. Put it all together, an efficient home starter who has been thriving in this exact environment all year, a rested visiting ace with strikeout stuff and a firm leash on his usage, and a Colorado summer night with actual weather to it. The recipe tilts toward a much quieter scoreboard than the market seems to expect. As our second pick for this matchup, under the projected total is our full game total pick. Chicago White Sox versus Chicago Cubs. There's a story unfolding on the South Side that nobody outside of Chicago really wanted to write this year. A team that spent the last 2 seasons as one of the biggest punchlines in professional sports is now sitting alone at the top of its division, and they're strolling into Wrigley Field carrying the kind of swagger that only comes from actually earning it night after night. Just look at how these visitors arrived at this game. They walked into Detroit, punched the Tigers in the mouth on the road, and left town with a broom in their hands. 3 straight wins away from home, right before crossing town to face their oldest rival, and honestly, the Bats have looked genuinely dangerous the entire time. Here's the thing about that lineup right now. They're not just grinding out ugly one-run wins, they're slugging, they're stacking extra base hits, and they've been putting up crooked numbers with a regularity that would have felt unthinkable in this city just 12 months ago. Meanwhile, the Northsiders, kind of the opposite vibe at the moment. Their bats have gone unusually quiet over the last week or so. Their pitching has been leaking runs at a rate that would make any Wrigleyville regular reach for a second old style, and they just stumbled through a weekend series that left more questions than answers. Now consider who's on the mound for the men in black tonight. The market still sees the Cubs' Japanese lefty as this ace-caliber presence, and yeah, on the season-long ledger, he looks the part. But zoom in on his recent form and the picture gets a whole lot messier. His last outing was rough. He got knocked around by the Nationals of all teams, and his numbers across the last handful of starts are uglier than his sparkling season totals would ever let you believe. On the other side, the South Side visitors send out a veteran right-hander who's still settling into a new uniform after a trade deadline arrival, but who just went out and tossed 7 scoreless innings against Cincinnati in his most recent turn, giving up exactly 1 hit. Not exactly a guy walking into this crosstown showdown with 0 confidence. And let's not forget, these 2 clubs already played earlier this season, and it was the visitors who walked out with the series win. The plus money underdog price gives them a friendly cushion tonight, and with the way both teams are trending in wildly opposite directions, that cushion honestly starts to feel like a gift. Somebody forgot to tell the sportsbooks that the best baseball being played between these two right now is coming from the visitors' dugout. As our first pick for this matchup, the Chicago White Sox to cover the spread as underdogs is our full game side pick. Wrigley Field has always had a personality of its own. Some nights it plays like a pitcher's sanctuary, that famous lake wind whipping in off Lake Michigan, turning would-be homers into lazy warning trackouts and making even the sluggers look human. Other nights, though, when that rooftop flag is snapping the opposite direction, the friendly confined stops being friendly at all if you happen to be the guy on the mound. Tonight is one of those other nights. The forecast has that flag pointed straight out toward left field at right around 10 miles per hour when the first pitch leaves the mound, and if you know Wrigley, you already know what that means. Warning track fly balls become souvenirs in the bleachers. Doubles down the line become three-run bombs onto Waveland Avenue. Pop-ups that would die harmlessly on a still afternoon suddenly get an extra push and clear the ivy before the outfielder can even set his feet. Nobody wants to be a starting pitcher at Clark and Addison when the wind gods are working against them like this. Layer in the fact that both bullpens have their share of hiccups lately and both offenses have been swinging some seriously live lumber, and this game starts to look less like a taut pitcher's duel and more like a proper summer slugfest waiting to break loose. The home team, even in the middle of a mini cold spell at the plate, still ranks near the very top of the entire sport in run production on the season, and their power has not gone anywhere. The visiting club has quietly become one of the more dangerous power lineups in the American League too, with home runs stacking up game after game over the last couple of weeks. Toss in a home pitching staff that has been surrendering long balls at an eyebrow-raising clip in recent outings, and the recipe for a busy scoreboard starts to write itself. Sure, there's always the outside chance of one of those weird nights where both starters find their best stuff and everything works out toward center, one of those quiet grinding affairs where nobody can string anything together. But between the wind, the ballpark, the recent bullpen wobbles, and two lineups that both know exactly what to do with a mistake pitch in August, betting on a quiet evening under the Wrigley lights feels a whole lot like trying to swim against the current. The scoreboard operator on Clark Street should probably keep an extra cup of coffee within arm's reach tonight. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. Los Angeles Dodgers versus Colorado Rockies. Something about this pitching matchup doesn't quite line up with what a quick glance at the records would suggest. Kansas City is handing the ball to Michael Wacha, who has been the closest thing to a reliable Monday night compass this rotation has had all year. He's running an earned run average right around 3.44 across roughly 138 innings, the kind of steady veteran work that keeps his team hanging in games even when the offense goes quiet. Wacha's changeup has been one of his signature pitches for years, and paired with a willingness to pound the strike zone, that recipe travels well against a road-weary lineup. On the other side, the Athletics are turning to Mason Barnett, and here's where the storyline gets a little fun. Barnett was originally drafted by Kansas City back in 2022, then shipped out to Oakland as one of the pieces in the Lucas Erkig trade a couple of summers back. Now he comes home to Kaufman to face his original organization, but there's a wrinkle worth paying attention to. He has spent almost this entire 2026 season working out of the Athletics bullpen, not as a member of their rotation. Asking a reliever to suddenly stretch out, navigate a big league lineup 2 or 3 times through, and do it in a road environment against a seasoned veteran on the other side is a tall order under any set of circumstances. Toss in that the visiting side is playing without their all-star first baseman Nick Kurtz, who's essentially done for the year with a thumb issue, and the traveling lineup is missing its most dangerous middle-of-the-order presence. The Athletics have been rough away from home all season, sitting at 23-40 in games on the road. Honestly, when you stack the veteran arm on the mound, the roster health picture, the ballpark, and the road versus home split all pointing in the same direction, the edges start to add up in a hurry. As our first pick for this matchup, the Kansas City Royals moneyline is our full game side pick. Now here's what makes the run environment tonight a lot more interesting than the surface number would have you believe. When one team is essentially opening a bullpen game in disguise, and that team happens to be the Athletics, whose overall staff earned run average sits near 5.29 on the year, the innings load on those relief arms turns into the entire story. Realistically, the visitors can only ask a converted reliever to give them 3, maybe 4 innings before they hand things over to the pen. That means 5 or 6 innings for a relief group that has been leaking runs all summer, and that kind of math rarely breaks kindly for the low side of the total. Kansas City has enough offensive punch to make a tired bullpen pay, with Bobby Witt Jr. still the most disruptive force in the American League Central at the top of the order, the type of player who can flip a quiet frame into a crooked number with one swing or one stolen base. Michael Massey has quietly put together a productive middle order year and gives them another gear right behind Witt. Even the visitors bring enough thump with guys like Zach Geloff and Lawrence Butler to plate runs against a home starter who's already piled up a lot of miles this summer. Weather at Kaufman tonight is honestly a summer dream. Mid-80s at first pitch, dry air, and only a light north breeze. Nothing that's going to knock a fly ball back into play. It's the kind of night where balls carry to the gaps rather than dying on the warning track. Kaufman gets talked about as a spacious park, but with two staffs already stretched thin and a bullpen game brewing on the visitor's side, the ball only has to find one hot streak or one bad matchup to blow this thing wide open. Late-season baseball for two clubs sitting well outside the playoff race often drifts into hitter-friendly territory anyway, since arms are worn down and one-run baseball loses a little of its urgency. The projected number feels a touch conservative once you factor in everything actually on the field tonight. As our second pick for this matchup, over the projected total is our full game total pick. That's all for now, so if you have any other games you would like reviewed, then leave a comment down below with the game you would like analyzed, subscribe to our channel, leave a like on this video, and we'll get to it as soon as we possibly can. We would also love to hear your opinion on the picks presented to you in this video, whether you agree or disagree with them, so leave a comment down below and do let us know.